Hello, welcome to Federal Sector Watch under President Trump 47. Today's episode deals with several topics associated with unions in the federal sector and the firings of federal employees. Today is March 7, 2025. I'm Merrick Masters, Professor of Business, Emeritus, commentator, and podcaster. The topics we'll cover are the joint OMB and OPM guidance on agency reductions in force, union contracts and management rights as regard to return to office policies, TSA unionization in question, that is the unionization of airport screeners, the OPM union official time memo, agency appointee removals and subsequent litigation, and federal employee compensation, total and per employee. Firings. The Office of Management and Budget and Office of Personnel Management issued a joint memorandum on February 26, 2025, which indicated that the Trump administration is expanding the scope of efforts to reduce the federal workforce through agency-mandated reductions in force. The employees' right for reductions in force would include those who are on probationary status, generally those employees in the federal service who've been at work in their position for less than a year. There are 220,000 of such employees. Those employees who are classified as non-essential employees, those who would be furloughed if there were a government shutdown, there are approximately 700,000 of those employees. Some of those may also be probationary employees. And then there's an undetermined amount of underperforming employees based on performance evaluations that would be ripe for these kinds of reductions in force. The joint memo from OMB and OPM shows the coordinated and expanded effort to RIF employees. Agency RIF and reorganization plans will be administered over 3 phases, and it's on a sharp timeline with the plans to reduce the workforces accordingly to be implemented by September 30th of this year. Recent OPM guidance on personnel actions also encourage the agencies to consider putting on administrative leave those employees who may not be subject to a reduction in force or a RIF. Those candidates for a administrative leave placement would include those employees whose work is being eliminated or restructured, or where the agency weighs changes to the individual's role in the agencies as part of a workforce realignment. Union contracting and management rights come into conflict over return to office policies, and this OPM guidance indicates that the agency heads will seek to set overall levels of telework and to exclude specific positions from telework eligibility. The Trump administration wants to supersede union contracts that restrict what it considers to be management rights in this area of return to office policies. The Office of Personnel Management has also issued guidance on union official time, requesting information on the use of such time. I anticipate that they may be considering implementing an executive order like they did in May of 2018 in the first administration of President Trump to restrict the use of official time by unions. There is also a report in the Washington Examiner which suggests that the Obama administration's effort to allow for the unionization of airport screeners under the Transportation Security Administration in 2011 was not thoughtfully considered enough in terms of its potential legality. I suggest that there may be an effort to roll back this granting of the right to form a union in the Transportation Security Administration with respect to airport screeners. and this right was granted by memorandum of the TSA Administrator Pistoli in February of 2011. Subsequently, or shortly thereafter, the American Federation of Government Employees won a representation election to represent those airport screeners and has done so since and negotiated contracts to cover those employees. The Cato Institute report on privatizing the Transportation Security Administration reflects the fact that economic conservatives urge the privatization of airport screeners, and I just saw a report recently today, March 7th, that the Trump administration may be considering privatizing the United States Postal Service and Amtrak. If this were done, it would be one of the most aggressive efforts to privatize part of the federal sector, which has been done at state and local governments in a variety of different areas. Project 2025 has also called into question the appropriateness of public sector unions in the first place. And I think that you may see some effort on the part of the administration to say that in certain agencies of the federal government, such as the Transportation Security Administration, if they decide not to privatize it, that unions should not have the right to representation of employees in that area. The administration has also, President Trump has removed appointees, presidential appointees to the Federal Labor Relations Authority, the Merit Systems Protection Board, the Office of Special Counsel, and the Federal Services Impasses Panel. These removals are subject to varying levels of litigation in the federal courts, and you can go to Just Security website and get more specific information about litigation, and I provided some recent court decisions on this that are provided in that website, which is a very good source of information. You also have information here on federal employee total and per employee costs. There are roughly 2.3 million civilian employees in the federal government. It's estimated, according to this Cato organization white paper, that the cost of compensation, which would include wages and benefits of these employees, is about $403 billion, and that the average federal civilian worker with wages and benefits makes about $157,000. This suggests that there are limits in the amount of savings that the administration can get from reductions in force. Obviously, you're not going to eliminate all 2.3 million. Probably closer to 10 to 20% would be the aim, and that would produce savings that are relatively limited in terms of the overall size of the federal deficit. But nonetheless, the administration will pursue them as being necessary to its agenda. It's really pursuing a policy of sharply increasing the powers of the executive to manage the federal workforce and reduce federal spending through empowerment powers. More about that later. A little bit more about myself that you can read here. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Stay tuned for more. I look forward to talking with you in the near future.